I want you to stop buying new games at launch because I guarantee it's going to make you a happy gamer. The gaming industry is constantly releasing new games. Everything from AAAs to indies, MMOs, live services. There are just so many games that are wanting your attention. But here's the thing. Hear me out. More often than not, brand new games at launch are just not worth your time or money. I'll explain why. Article source will be linked down in the description below. Like, sub to the channel, do all the YouTube things. Let's get into it. Now, I don't want to throw game developers under the bus because developing and releasing a game is hard. Yet it is an amazing technological achievement. As an ex-game dev myself, it always amazes me to no end. You have all these bright minds from tech, design, art, coming together to create an experience. And while some game design is well practiced and known, there are still so many unknowns when it comes to developing a game. This is especially compounded depending on the complexity of the game's design. That said, the business side of games adds an extremely challenging pressure for game developers. Tight deadlines for milestones determine whether you get your next paycheck that allows you to pay all of your developing staff. Complicated contracts with publishers and vendors that require you to release your game by a set date regardless of the state of your game. Plenty of other things that complicate the development process. I think you get the idea. But in the end, game studios and publishers are in the business of selling games. And we, the gamers, are the customers. Paying our hard-earned money should guarantee us an enjoyable experience, right? Right? So for example, if I walked into a bakery that had a sign saying fresh baked cookies, and when I buy a cookie, it's cold and stale, that's not acceptable. I want that cookie to be warm, chocolate morsels melting, just making a mess in my hands and my face as I enjoy each bite and desperately search for a napkin. The sign says fresh baked cookies. Come on. In my opinion, I think this all started when gaming platforms gained internet capabilities. I'd like to take us on a trip to the past, back before our gaming platforms were connected to the World Wide Web. Prior to this, game developers had to make sure their games were as bug-free as possible. This is where the coined term of a game going gold comes from. When a game is finished and has gone through as much testing as possible, it gets printed to disc media for mass production, which is usually called and sometimes even represented by a gold disc. Now, games of the old days, they still had bugs, imbalances, and we gamers experienced them in both positive and negative ways. So, in some aspect, things haven't really changed. A great modern day example where you can see this is watching speedrunners, video game speedrunners, who utilize exploits of bugs and glitches to finish games at incredible speeds. But with that said, the games were still playable and for the most part polished for gamers to enjoy. A long-running game franchise that I'd like to use as an example is Street Fighter, specifically Street Fighter 2 and all of its iterations. Each iteration back in the 90s felt like a new game, usually introducing new character options, but most importantly, changing the balance and design of the game. Since they couldn't patch the base Street Fighter 2 game, Capcom would just release a new version of the game and would attach sort of a moniker to the name. So you have Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Super Street Fighter 2. I bet if they had the ability to patch their game via the internet, we would have just seen the base Street Fighter 2 game change and evolve over time without needing to add a turbo or a super to the title. Over time, as the internet became more common in households, we became more connected. Once gaming devices became connected to the internet, it allowed developers to be able to provide continued support for their games. This was actually a good thing. as patches would be released to fix bugs and fix performance issues over time. But this capability has been exploited. Flash forward to modern day. While a game still goes gold towards the end of its development cycle, it's really not ready for gaming audiences. Developers continue to work on bugs, polishing their game all the way through the game's official release. Say hello to day one patches. A day one patch is provided, and it's usually huge, requiring the gamer to download large updates. I can't speak for other regions, but in the US, not everyone has access to fast internet, which can make that download take hours, and that's not good. That's not the initial impression you want to give to your customers. And with that said, unfortunately, the generic gaming audience still participates in day one game releases. It's not their fault though. The huge marketing efforts of games hypes it up. The gaming audience gets hyped, they buy into it, and it convinces them to spend their money on broken game releases. The reality of the gaming landscape is that most games at launch are busted. And this has become a problem for all gaming platforms: Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, and especially on PC. And it almost feels like this is just the norm. Recently, we saw the Spider-Man 2 PC release with terrible performance issues. This was surprising, as the two dev studios, Insomniac and Nixxes Studios, released the prior two Spider-Man titles on PC without any issues. We don't know what happened. It does raise some speculations though that the Spider-Man 2 port for PC was rushed and released with bugs and performance issues as a result. Dragon's Dogma 2 released almost a year ago on all platforms with bad performance. Even today, the game still struggles to maintain a solid 60 frames per second on performance mode. Cyberpunk 2077 released in 2020, and it was a buggy mess of a game. Flash forward to today though, and it's an amazing game. But the launch was so bad that it was removed from the PlayStation Store, refunding digital customers for their purchase. No Man's Sky was a shell of a game, with bugs and performance issues. Today, it is a labor of love for the devs, and it has so much additional content and amazing galactic experiences for players to have. These are just a few examples, and while some of them have made a complete turnaround and turned into wonderful experiences, there are others that never do. And for this reason, this leaves a sour impression for customers who will choose to return, refund, and not play the game ever again. And in some cases, not play any games released by that developer or publisher. It is just not worth it for game developers and publishers to release now and fix later. Unfortunately, this is probably not going to end, considering how increasingly complicated games are becoming to develop. So it feels bad. You've been highly anticipating this game to release, only to experience bugs and jank. But to make matters worse, you've also paid a premium price for what feels like an early access game. AAA games on average cost around $60 to $70 USD, assuming you didn't spend extra for the premium edition or early game access, which if you did, that would increase your cost probably closer to $100. This premium pricing is also rumored to be going up in the future, with the potential of the hotly anticipated Grand Theft Auto 6 maybe costing $100 base price. Depending how big of a gamer you are, you might be spending this much to play a new game at least once a month, maybe even twice a month. That's no small amount. You're paying a premium price and having to play buggy jank. This should not be the norm, and there is something we can do about it. So there is a wonderful strategy that us gamers can use to avoid this constant cycle of disappointment with newly released games. Stop buying new games at launch. Just as the title of this video suggests, let these new games cook a little bit longer. If the developers are going to release now and fix later, then we can and definitely should play their games later in turn. This might be hard for you. You're probably like, but I want to play new video games on release because of this reason or that reason. I get it, as I have made some exclusions to this rule myself. For me, it's the Doom and Quake franchises. I just love these games, and I always will. But in my defense, id Software, the developer behind these two games, they have plenty of goodwill that they've earned from me and many others that are fans of their games. And I can trust them to release a game that feels good and plays well and performs perfectly. Maybe not perfectly, but pretty close. But yeah, that's not the case for every developer or publisher. So in those cases, hear me out on this. If you want to play a game as soon as possible and you just can't muster the willpower to hold off, at least give these games a week or two to potentially get patched and have their bugs fixed with an update. Avoid that day one frustration and hassle. Ideally though, I would suggest waiting even longer. Set your gaming schedule back. Play games at later dates when they are better optimized. And since you waited, let's not forget that you'll probably be able to pick up these new games at a discounted price. As previously said, launch prices are premium, and they may potentially go up in the near future. If you wait though, you'll start to see a 10, 15, maybe even a 50% discount off of the original price of that game. And it might even include a DLC or two with that product. As an example, I'm currently playing Cyberpunk 2077 for the first time, and I'm about 20 hours in, and it's an amazingly positive experience. I picked it up during the Steam Winter Sale, and it included the DLC, and I got it for an extremely low price. Your wallet will appreciate this savings, and your mood will be much better for playing a polished game, and that always feels great. So stop buying new games at launch. It's as easy as that. If game developers and publishers would rather release a broken game at full price and fix it later, then they don't deserve your hard-earned money. It's just not worth the negative experience of playing a broken game. Remember, we play games to have fun, and broken, buggy, messy games are not fun. Is there an upcoming game release that you're planning on holding off and playing at a later date? What's one game that you didn't play at launch but experienced it at a later date and enjoyed it? Leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your stories. Remember to like this video, share it with friends and family. Maybe your mom will stop buying so many games at launch after watching it. Don't forget to subscribe for more great gaming content, and make sure to check out this recommended video right here. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.